Right. So, hello everyone. This is the course How to Be Negative, one of the last meetings actually. And this month we are talking about autism and introversion. And I will present the essay that I wrote for this month. It is titled The Inverted World, Autism, Introversion, and the Extroverted Norm. And in this essay, first what I do is I expose something that is obvious. The norm of extroversion means that in currently society, we can still feel this norm of one supposed to be extroverted, one supposed to be outward, outside faced, and which means that this extroversion is seen as the norm of how one's supposed to be and is comprehended as the measure of well-being. So we feel this necessity to be outside of ourselves, as if the world, the relation to the world and the relation to the other is something that happening outside of us and not inside of us. And in this essay, I try to claim that it's the other way around. It's something that is happening inside of us. We relate to the world from and to others from inside, and going outside is rather bypassing, like skipping relation or imitating relation. So going inside might be seen, instead of failure to connect, might be seen as way of sheltering the world, so other way around. And this norm of extroversion that we now have, and I'm aware that it's problematic to talk about both autism spectrum and introversion without distinguishing them, because those are in clinical discourse and in common discourse, common comprehension, those are different things. And but my excuse that both are something that contradicts or is seen as a deviation from this norm of extroversion, even maybe in different ways, not maybe, but of course in different ways and with different intensities, but still this is the autism spectrum. And extroversion and introversion, when someone is introvert, is seen as the deviation from the norm of extroversion. And there are actually some research that suggests that I'm mentioning in this essay, the research that suggests that one should comprehend introversion as the autism spectrum, which I think I would be fine with. But nonetheless, those are just together as the enemies. Autism spectrum and introversion is something that is opposite to the norm of extroversion. So the norm of extroversion is that whatever resists this outward, outside movement, the silence, the withdrawal, stimming, or solitude, it's treated with suspicion, like something that has to be externalized, turned outward. And conventional therapy actually can be seen as pressuring to adhere to this extroverted norm, as the therapeutic intervention would be in case of autism spectrum, and in case of when someone is introverted, would be this introversion would be treated not as a way of being, but as something to fix, something to get rid of. And one of the most I'm offering some of the examples of this therapeutic perspective that is turning people into trying to turn people into extroverts. And one of the most striking example that I'm also mentioning is the applied behavior analysis, the ABA, which is commonly used as the treatment of autism spectrum. And it is criticized as something dehumanizing and in relation to autism spectrum, precisely by the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, which claims this ABA treatment is inherently dehumanizing because it's rooted in coercion. It's trying to normalize like autistic mode of existence, trying to either to mask it or to suppress it or to reshape it. So it's not in therapeutic setting. Autism spectrum and introversion are not comprehended as ways of being, but just as something that has to be, as a deviation that has to be corrected. And in general, this going inside of oneself is treated as something one have to overcome to turn outward, and it's miscomprehended as absence or refusal of the world, of the connection with other and the world. But it may actually be the opposite, which is the claim of this essay, that it might be going in, might be a way of embracing the world within oneself, and more profound form of relation to the world than the extroverted form of relation. And so inwardness is comprehended as pathology, and outwardness as something comprehended as a cure. So whatever one in current culture, if you encounter inwardness, we try to externalize it as a cure and perceive it as a cure. And this already with autism, it is already coded on the level of the very word autism, the way it was initially used. This quote from lawyer whatever his name is pronounced, but this quote stolen from Leon Brenner book on autism. We're going to discuss his book next week with him. But the very term, how it's initially used as something that derives from this auto, self, turning in, and it's associated with someone who has no contact with outside world, as someone who is withdrawn into oneself, which means that they're escaping kind of the world, external world, and detached from reality and with the predominance of the inner life. That's something that is termed initially autism. And this auto part is something that can be read, can be comprehended differently, not as a withdrawal and insufficiency, something that has to be corrected or extroverted, but it can be, there might be, well, there is a different reading of auto, of the not as a withdrawal, but as something else. And to provide this reading, the alternative reading of auto, of internalization, I rely on Luz Irigaray, who works precisely her comprehension of feminine interiority. So she doesn't provide any. She's not talking about autism or introversion as such, but she's talking about different kind of subject than conventional subject. And here she frames it more in the as a feminist critique. But in this essay, I'm trying to stay away from the not talk about feminist issues, but rather take this comprehension of feminine interiority as alternative comprehension of interiority as such, or as introvert subject. Because for her, what interiority of a woman represents, feminine interiority represents, is different than how this auto is read in case of autism, as something to get rid of, as a pathology, and as deficit. In her reading, when you turn inward, this interiority of the feminine interiority is not that there is, what she claims, nothing and everything inside. So it's not that you escape in the world, inside yourself. I mean, it's not that you escape inside yourself, but this inwardness might be mode of intimacy with the world and with others, with everything and nothing at the same time. So what she offers is the different comprehension of interiority, and not something deficient, and not something to change into extroversion, because it's just that she provides with this reading alternative comprehension of the subject that is introverted, and it's self-sufficient in this. It's not the one that needs to be extroverted, because then extroverted normative subject, the neutral subject, like subject the way it's supposed to be, or idea how subject's supposed to be imposed in our culture, is at least according to Luz Irigaray, is masculine subject. They're associated with going outside of themselves, as active and autonomous and visible, all those qualities that are demanded from introverted subjects. So she claims that this is different. This kind of subject, the alternative subject to the externalized subject, is different. It's she is this kind of subject. It's not defined through externalization and mastery, but it's rather defined through this nearness and intimacy to itself, to the world. And with this, she introduces a different logic. What she calls the feminine interiority is not the failure to go outwards, but this other kind of subjectivity. At least in my reading, this is what presupposes that this kind of reading presupposes that the world is not out there, but the world is inside, is nothing and everything at the same time that is inside. So she doesn't need to go outside of herself to reach the world, because the world is from within herself. And so this claim of nothing and everything, this circle here represents the subject. So normally with the masculine, what is coded, claimed as masculine, was just say extroverted subject, which is seen as a norm. This kind of subject is comprehended like you are the inside of yourself is where you're hiding. And you're supposed to be externalized. You're supposed to go outside of yourself into the world, be visible. And it's also a subject that is initially not connected with others. It's autonomous. That's why there's this need to go outside of oneself, to reach out. This subject is someone that is characterized by mastery. You go outside, like the conventional subject who follows their desire. There is desire, something there, something outside of themselves that they need to master to satisfy their desire, something like that. And inwardness is seen as the shelter. You're just enclosed on yourself, even egoistic in a way. Like it believes that there is a self you hide from the world into. And to be cured, to be fixed, you need to be withdrawn from this self. And this is conventional reading of the subject. That's supposed to be subject was applied extroverted norm. And if you apply this alternative reading of introverted subject, relying on loose Irigaray, the subject where there is no interiority understood in terms that you go inside and there is you inside and you are the shelter from the world, or the wall. There are you inside of the walls that separate you from the world. This is different. This you go interiority is nothing and everything. The whole world is within, and there is no you. There is no one there. You is rather the self is rather somewhere outside, something that is presented, the mask presented to the world. Inside there is nothing and everything. So you kind of collapse, fall into the inwardness, and it's not a protective core. It's something the opposite, rather. Somewhere where you fall, lose yourself. The self is dissolved, because self is just a mask to present to the world. So inside is rather the rapture where you fall, you encounter this nothing, everything, and that's the genuine connection to the world within you in this space of interiority. So she is herself the world, we can say, folded inward, this kind of subject, where the other is carried rather than pursued. So in conventional subject, to reach the other, you have to go outside, which presupposes the mastery. You kind of capture the other to satisfy your desire or something, or networking, mastery of the world. And here you don't need to go outside. It's not a mastery, it's taking care, you're embracing it. And embracing it, holding it within, means it's a part of you. So um, the skin of the world is kind of your own skin. So it's different way of relating to the world. If you take care, the world exists within your embrace, within you caring for the world, not outside of you. Outside, reaching out from within, outside is the relation of mastery. So holding the rest of the world within you, embracing it with yourself, and inwardness here becomes a threshold into the world, a portal where the self dissolves and it becomes this, dissolves into the world and becomes the world. So it's other way around. This is not the protective skin, protective wall from the outside that you hide into. It's the other way around. It's going outside, pretending that there is coherent self, and doing the mastery thing is hiding from this embrace, from actual being interconnected with the world. It's outside. Extroversion is escape from the heaviness of the world that one is holding inside, from the intensity of this inwardness. So protective, it's not protective shell, is the intensity is here of connection, and escape is in extroversion, the other way around, not inside. So the subject hides in extroversion, not in introversion. And something that I would write, that subjectivity understood in this way is defined by separatedness from the world, but not by being separated, but by being within, and not through the distance, but through the proximity and nearness. We are in proximity to the world, and this inwardness, not outwardness, is, well, the inwardness and outwardness got utterly confused here, but you got the idea. And the last thing, again, I'm talking about mother, inside out mother. And it turns out that this Egon Schiele painting is the only, I'm showing it to you again, even though I'm not writing about it this time. I did in previous essay, but just it turned out that that's the only image of pregnancy that I can tolerate, because the other images of pregnancy are just romanticized, happy, stupid pictures. But this one is fine. So the again, the subjectivity, and Irigaray is also talking about the mother, the perspective, the subject of the mother. And if we take not necessarily feminine perspective, but the more precisely maybe the perspective of the subject that is pregnant. And I'm aware how weird it sounds when I'm talking about the pregnant subject as the default subject, and when I'm universalizing pregnant subject, claiming that it's subject as such, or we can take it as default subject and comprehend subjectivity through it. But to me, or even to us, if you think about it, this normal subject that is presented at neutral, the one that is, according to feminist critique, is masculine subject. And here what is relevant is extroverted subject. We can also, if we critically think about it, we can also see how strange this subject is to be universalized. Like, why this subject? Why do we need to comprehend this subject as neutral, as basic, and start as the countdown from this subject? And woman in relation to this subject would be the other deviation. Pregnant subject would be even the deviation from the deviation. That's why it appears, if you try to universalize it, it appears as something weird to us. But I was I have good way of explaining the strangeness of the conventional subject as universal, the masculine subject as universal. And I'm not sure I should talk about it, but maybe it will explain certain things, at least show how the subject that we see as normal, neutral, which is masculine extroverted subject, is weird. At least it's weird to me. So the conventional subject, neutral, the subject that is extroverted masculine, Freudian, we can say subject, that one that is driven by desire, to get to possess something outside of themselves, to satisfy their desire, to attain pleasure. This kind of subject is, for me, associated. I have this childhood trauma. When I was visiting my friend when I was a child, they had a puppy, not a puppy, maybe a dog. The tiny dog, maybe it wasn't puppy, just a small dog, which looked really cute. And every time, like kids, you want to play with the dog. and you would call the dog. The problem was the dog to play with, and he would run and wiggle his tail. But the problem with the dog is that he was humping everything. Like, so you would call the dog to play with you, and he would run and wiggle his tail, and the next second, the dog is humping your leg. So for me, this perspective of subject is only applicable as a universal, only applicable to this dog, the Freud subject, where everything is the masked sexuality and whatever else is just sublimation of sexuality. So when you're too excited, you're not able to mask it. For me, this perspective is only applicable to this particular dog, and maybe it's not even respectful enough to apply to the dog, because maybe it was a stage, I hope. But just for you to show that the pregnant subjectivity is not less, it's not more weird than this perspective that we normally use without thinking about it. So I hope it worked. And this, you prefer now this perspective, the perspective of the pregnant embodiment. For me, I appreciated a lot. First, because it's less irritating than the humping dog. It's associated more with care. It might be annoying. It's like the grandma who is trying to care for you or something like that, but still less annoying than the dog that is humping your leg when you want to play with him. So this perspective is valuable, the perspective of pregnant subject. And my attempt, why I'm attempting to universalize it, to start with it and to see it as neutral, because it's precious, because it's already represents interconnectivity with others. It's not the autonomous subject, it's subject that represents both subjectivity and connection to the other. And it's subject that is shaped, whose subjectivity is shaped through connection, is defined through connection. It's kind of both the subject and connection, unlike in Freudian humping dog subject, because there is no love possible in this kind of connection. It's any connection of the dog with my leg is just not love, but way of the dog to satisfy its desire, his desire. So love is not possible with the Freudian subject. With this subject, it's possible, because it's not mastery of my leg, it's the rather care and holding. So that's why this perspective, I think, is better to universalize. So this kind of subject, pregnant subject, it contains the other within itself. And for me, it's the image of a subject as such. We contain the other. The other is within ourselves. We relate to them through holding them, so looking inside, we discover the other who and the world that we care for. And it's not that somewhere outside you need to reach to discover them. Rather, going outside would be betraying them, would be just imitating connection. So the extroverted connection would be rather imitation of connection. So introverted subject, if we take this subject as such, the comprehension of the introverted subject changes. It's not the one who is escaping into themselves, is the world is within them. They're sheltering the world with themselves. So it represents the subjectivity that is interrelational. And I would write that if you ask the question in relation to a pregnant subject, what does it mean to look inside when one is pregnant? And if we see introversion based on the universalized pregnant subject, the reply would be different from the norm of extroversion, when we say that looking inside is escaping in oneself. If the model, if the subject as such is pregnant subject, we would say that looking inside, it's not antisocial withdrawal, it's the intensity of sociality. And kind of, if we apply this subject, the pregnant subject, and make it universal, the universal model of comprehension of subjectivity and interconnectivity, we would say that the world is not outside of me. It's something within me, in my love, my care, my attachment, my pain, my embrace. So there is no me. Me is this embrace, and we are kind of pregnant with each other. And pregnancy here is not just metaphorical, it's not just metaphor, but the kind of the basic network structure that is underlying being with. And one last thing that I will mention, that I'm mentioning in this essay, is the intense world theory that suggests alternative hypothesis for autism. Something that was suggested by Markram, actually two Markram, Henry Markram, Camilla Markram, and Tanya Rinaldi. So in this paper, and later there's some research that testifies in favor of this theory. This kind of the maternal topology of relation that I'm offering here, it resonates with their neuroscientific account, alternative account of neurodivergence, because they suggest that what is happening in autism, it's not deficiency. It's not that they cannot feel something, or it's not that it's deficiency in terms of connection to the world and they're withdrawing inside, whereas there is nothing. It's rather the world is too intense. It's overly, it's hyper intensity, it's heightened perception, attention, memory, and emotionality. It's the opposite of deficiency. So the world is overwhelming, and this withdrawal is rather the result, a way of dealing with this intensity. So it's contrary to the usual bias. It's not the silence connection, it's not the absence of connection to the world and to other, but overly intense connection when one is perceiving too much and too deeply. Right, I'm gonna switch this off.